Hello and welcome to No Skips, the show where we talk about albums that we don't skip any songs on. I'm Elijah Winfrey, I'm your host, and we are talking about an album today that meant a lot to me as a kid. Okay, it meant a lot to me as a kid growing up, and I got to tell you why it meant a lot to me. All right, so I am somebody who enjoys watching American Idol and shows like The Voice and things like that. I get sucked into that type of stuff. I'm not a reality TV show buff or anything, but when it comes to like American Idol, I was into it. I really enjoyed it. In fact, my stepmother, Michael, she was very into American Idol, which is probably one of the reasons why I got into it. Okay. But I remember back in, I want to say 2005, it had to be like 2005, Chris Daughtry came onto the scene on American Idol. And he was blowing everybody away because he was different. A lot of the people up to that point had been pop stars or R&B singers trying to make it. He was rock and roll all the way through. And, he was out there singing songs from like the top rock artists of the day. And he just was different, right? He was different than everybody else they had on that show. And I was heartbroken when he didn't get to the finish line in that program. If you remember, okay, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but it came down between him and Catherine McPhee. And I think a lot of people thought, I don't need to vote for Chris Daughtry because so many people are going to vote for him that he's automatically going to get through. And so a lot of people didn't vote for Chris on that particular week. And because of that, well, Catherine McPhee ended up staying on the show. Chris Daughtry had to go. And I believe that was also the season that Taylor Hicks ended up winning, which Taylor Hicks' debut album, I remember seeing that at Big Lots in the bargain bin. No disrespect to him, but that's not where you want your debut album to be a few months after you release it. So let's talk about Chris Daughtry, because that's the album we're talking about today from 2006, November of 2006, came out right around Thanksgiving time of 2006. The album is simply called Daughtry by the band Daughtry. And if folks are wondering why did they name it that, it's not an ego thing. Okay, it's not an ego thing. Chris Daughtry was like, well, we were gonna, name it something else, but because of how popular I was on this TV show, it made sense to just name it after my last name so that people would know where I went. Not an ego thing, it just is a common sense thing. But it's by the band Daughtry, okay, by Chris Daughtry, and came out in November of 2006. The album has got 12 songs on it. Guess how many singles it's got? 7 singles came off this album. 7 singles. And the last single came off this album in 2008 for an album that was released in 2006. That's how you know you got something right, when you're getting that type of mileage out of your album. When your record label isn't pushing you back into the studio to try again. And instead they're saying, take your time and, get back to us whenever whenever you feel like it. Because right now we're still all making money right now on the last thing you did. That's how you know you've done a good job. But the singles that came off this album, It's Not Over was the first one. Home was the second one. What I Want was the third single. Over You was the fourth single. Crashed was the fifth single. Feels Like Tonight was the sixth single off this album. And What About Now was the seventh single off this album. Now, that's 7 singles off of an album that only had 12 songs. So this is going to be kind of a shorter episode because it took all the songs I was going to talk about. A lot of the songs I love are the ones that are singles. And in fact, I can't really pinpoint one that's more my favorite than the other. But I got to tell you, back in the early 2000s, I was really into bands like Nickelback and Three Doors Down, stuff like that. And I still am into both of those bands, by the way. And Daughtry to me was like along those same lines. In fact, Daughtry's actually played concerts with Three Doors Down and Nickelback, and was playing concerts with them when he was starting his incline, when he was out of the American Idol scene and doing his own thing. So for me, it was like, oh, this is a really cool album. I really enjoy it. And I remember a lot of people having this album and playing it until it broke, and these songs and the music videos for these songs being very popular. Now, I will say, I have kind of given people a hard time in other episodes by talking about music videos where the band's in a warehouse, or there's some, a hot chick essentially walking around and the singer's singing to her or whatever, and they're in the warehouse and it's like your typical rock music video. This album has those things, but I still enjoyed it. Okay. I still enjoyed it. To me, like when they put a little extra effort into a music video, I really enjoy that. When there's like a theme or a storyline or whatever. And that's because I make movies. That's why I enjoy that type of stuff. But I'm not saying it's always bad when they just pick a warehouse and they play their instruments that are not even plugged in the warehouse. Okay. You get what I'm talking about. But this album, again, it's a badass album. It really is, in my opinion. Now I know some critics said that, Daughtry makes, rock music for soccer moms or whatever. So I guess call me a soccer mom, because I love this album. I really, really do. And I will tell you that it is 43 minutes long, just in case I hadn't already mentioned that. But again, 12 songs on it. You don't really go wrong listening to any of these. So make sure you do that. If you haven't already, you owe it to yourself too. And I will say there is a concert from early on in the process that Daughtry did. And I believe it was at Red Rocks or something. You'll know it's the right video because you have Daughtry performing, and then there's a pool. There's like a bunch of people, and then there's a pool where people are hanging out and listening to the show. It's not a long show, but he plays a lot of the singles. It was like one of his first concerts he did that he ever recorded after the American Idol thing. I'd encourage you to watch that because you'll get the feeling of when this album came out. And this is a good one. Again, came out in 2006, in November of 2006. It is a no skips album. It is Daughtry with the album Daughtry. You let me know if you skipped any songs in the comments below. If you didn't, let me know in the comments below. As always, I really, really do appreciate the support, and I will see you on the next episode of No Skips. Until next time, my friends, be good to yourself, be good to others in that order. I'll see you soon.